All right, next step in our language is the conditional operator. Okay, what is a conditional operator? Conditional operator says that you have two propositions. Okay, maybe simple, maybe compound, we don't care, but the truth table of one of those impacts or implies the truth table of other one. Okay, all right, that's the conditional operator, that the truth table of one is conditioned on the truth value of the other proposition. Okay, so we read this simple conditional proposition as if then P. Okay, so the most important part on this slide is that this thing itself is a proposition. Okay, keep that in mind. This thing itself is a proposition, which means that this thing is either true or false. Okay, this thing need not always be true. The mistake people make is they assume that if P then Q is always true. It need not be. Okay, this is itself a proposition, which means that it can be false. All right. Okay, moving on. So if P then Q means that it's defined by truth table, जो मैं आपको एक मिनट में दिखाता हूँ. What it means is that if P is true, then Q is guaranteed to be true. Okay, that's what this statement is saying. And this statement could be wrong. Again, I said this could be false, but this is what the statement is saying, that if P is true, then Q is guaranteed to be true. Okay, so keep that in mind. If P then Q means that if P is true, then Q is guaranteed to be true. And how do we represent that in the truth table? What do you think would be the truth table of these things? Let me give you the possible values, and then you can tell me whether this is true or not. When both P and Q are true, then it must be true, right? When P is true and Q is false, then it's false, right? Then this statement जो मैंने guarantee की थी वो नहीं रही, right? I was guaranteeing that if P is true, then Q is true. That guarantee is now false. Now the statement must be false. When P is false and Q is true, okay, let's take a vote. People who think this is true. When P is true and Q is false. Sorry. No, it's the other one. If P, so वो तो हमने अभी देख लिया ना. If P is false and Q is true. Okay, so you guys say that's true. And what about when both of them are true? Both of them are false. Then it's true. Okay, good, awesome. We'll see an explanation of these two statements in a moment, but that's what the answer is. Okay, that this thing is only false when the condition is true and the promise is false. Okay. All right. As an example, if x is a positive even integer, then x is divisible by 2. Is it a true statement? Yeah, so that's the definition of even numbers, right? It's true. If x is not a positive even integer, then x may or may not be divisible by 2. So what I'm saying is, what happened? Let's read it again. So it says that if x is not a positive even number, then x may or may not be divisible by 2. Is it true or false? It's vaguely true. I'm not promising anything. I'm saying this could happen or this could happen. Right? The statement is true. A conditional proposition is false only when the premise is true and the conclusion is false. Okay? यहाँ पे दो definitions हैं जो मैंने mark नहीं की. But remember, the first part of the conditional is premise. Okay? And the second part is the conclusion. Okay? Keep that in mind. Should I move on? Yes? Questions? All right. So, the statement that the condition is, if the conclusion is true, regardless of the hypothesis part, the conditional statement is trivially true. Okay? If the conclusion part, the Q is true, उस केस में I don't even need to look at P. Okay? Right? So if the conclusion is always true, I don't even need to look at the premise. Okay? क्योंकि जो चीज़ promise की जा रही है, that's true. So the statement would always be true. Okay? इसको हम कहते हैं this is trivially true. Okay? Does this make sense? Yeah, here's an example of this. If I make a promise that if you score more than 90, you will get an A. Okay? If at the end of the course you get an A, you don't need to worry about whether you scored more than 90 or not. Right? Because I delivered on my promise. Regardless कि आपको वो 90 score है या नहीं है. Okay? The statement is trivially true if you got an A. Okay? There is a similar statement to make. Here's an example. It says that if elephants can fly, then 2 plus 2 is 4. Since 2 plus 2 is always true, I don't need to worry about whether elephants can fly or not. Okay? I would say the statement is always true. This conditional is never false. Alright. Yeah, since the conclusion holds, I don't need to worry about the premise. Okay? इसलिए हम इसको कहते हैं कि this is the statement, this conditional is trivially true. Okay? Okay? There's another way to figure out a conditional is always true, and that's called the vacuously true conditional. This is when your hypothesis is false. Okay? If your hypothesis is false, you don't need to worry about whether your conditional proposition conclusion is true or not. Okay? Because the conditional की एक requirement थी. अगर वो requirement पूरी नहीं हुई, तो फिर आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि promise true नहीं है. Okay? So again, if I come back to the same statement, if you score more than 90, you will get an A. If you didn't score more than 90, then this promise is always true. Right? The promise would have been activated if you scored more than 90. Right? The promise is not even activated, which means the promise is vacuously true. Okay? Are we on the same page? Yes? No? You're not? Okay, so what I'm saying is, जब आपके conditional का hypothesis false हो जाए, तो जो conditional किसी ने दिया था, आप उसको false नहीं कह सकते. Okay? So he made a promise कि if this happens, then I will do this. अगर वो premise ही true नहीं है, तो फिर आपको नहीं कह सकते कि आपका जो promise था वो गलत था. Okay, that's what it's saying. Okay? Cool. So here's an example. It says that if unicorns exist, then 1 plus 1 is 3. This statement is true vacuously because unicorns don't exist. Right? If unicorns don't exist, then there's no given कि ये वाली चीज़ true होनी चाहिए या नहीं होनी चाहिए. You guys think? If P then Q, is it equivalent to Q then P? It's not. Okay? These are two different statements. And here's an explanation. P then Q means that if P is true, then Q is true, and Q then P means that if Q is true, then P is true. These two statements have different meanings and can have different truth values. Here's an example. If I say that so P then Q says, for example, that if it's raining, I carry an umbrella. Okay? If it's raining, I carry an umbrella. That does not imply that if I carry an umbrella, it would definitely be raining. Okay? So keep that in mind. These two things are not the same. I mean, this is a valid statement. This is a valid proposition. If Q then P is also a valid proposition, but it's not equal to P then Q. Are you good?